Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business. The one that answers why somebody should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. This is the story that defines the very character and nature of an organization. At Vendilli, we call it your capital S story. In each episode of Storylines Live, we feature guests that have great insights on business storytelling, who can share their experiences and key learnings with you to help you do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable business results. Today, I'm really excited. We have Jorge Chavez of Topaz Sales Consulting with us, and folks, you're going to be really surprised. Successful sales actually involves storytelling. A little bit different storytelling than the storytelling you find in marketing, but they are closely related. Jorge is the founder and president of Topaz in Austin, Texas. Great city, by the way. With more than 30 years of sales experience, he's the creator of the buyer facilitator philosophy, and we are going to talk about that in this episode. Jorge and his team work with CEOs, founders, and sales leaders to build teams that drive revenue through trust, clarity, and mutual fit. Boy, those are terms. We're going to dig into that, Jorge, because a lot of people don't think that has anything to do with sales, right? Through training, leadership coaching, and hiring, Jorge equips organizations to build scalable sales cultures. He's also a keynote speaker and mentor. He's dedicated to transforming how companies approach sales and leadership. Jorge, welcome to Storylines Live.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here, and hopefully we bring some valuable content for your listeners that they leave with some things that they can apply. So it's great to be here. I appreciate your time.
You bet. In your introduction, I covered the warp and woof of it. Is there anything else you think our audience would appreciate knowing about your background before we dig in?
You know, about my background, I've been in the sales arena most of my career, and I would share that most of the way that I've been trained and the way people think about sales never fully aligned with my heart and what I believe when it comes down to relationships. So I always struggled with the perception of sales and what sales is all about. Educate, convince, go for the yes. And I always felt it was about relationships. So I think in my background, everything I say is coming from a place that even though I've been in sales, I've always felt it's about relationships, and I've always led with that, even if the companies I worked for felt differently, which has led me to be a business owner for the last 25 years. I had to create my own business to have a culture that would serve a greater purpose and I could live out my values. So that's a little bit of a background.
Wow, I love that. We're going to dig into that for sure in this episode. I want to put a pin in that and come back to it. Before we do that, Jorge, we always ask our guests on Storylines Live, which of those 4 questions that the capital S story answers is most important to them right now? And your answer, surprisingly for a sales guy, was why would somebody buy from you? Can you explain for our audience a little bit why you picked that?
Well, why would someone buy from us? If you go back to, and this is actually things that we help people understand when they're thinking about sales and what sales is all about. Why do people buy in general? And what are the motivators for making a decision to purchase something? And we would highlight our biggest competitor, no matter what business you're in, isn't your biggest competitor. Some people would argue it's your self-talk. I would agree with that. But our biggest competitor is the status quo. No change. How many sales are lost to not a competitor, but they just keep doing the same thing? So why would people buy? People buy we use a term, and many have maybe heard it, the word pain. And what is pain? Well, we would describe it as, so pain is personal, it's negative, and it's emotional. So the person you're talking to has to experience some level of pain, something negative, personal, and emotional. And it's a result of something that they want or need. It's what happens to them if they don't get it. they experience pain. So why do people buy? They buy to avoid pain. Then who do they buy from? Someone they trust.
There you
So
go.
why do people buy from Topaz? Because something in their business, in the domain of sales, they're hiring the wrong people. They're not effective hiring the right salespeople. They're
Mhm.
not effective selling enough of the products and services to the right customers at the right margins. And they may lack the leadership competence to lead a high performing sales team. They're ineffective, maybe coaching and motivating and holding people accountable. So therein lies some of the problems they have. Through discovery and curiosity, we ask questions to see, is there a compelling reason in their sales organization that would prompt them to do something other than the status quo?
Mm.
And the way we go about discovering that or learning that is by asking questions with a low or no pressure conversation where both parties are 100% honest with each other. Like, we're not manipulative, we're not outcome based, we're just seeking the truth. And through that process, we learn that they're broken. Doing nothing is not an option. So there's a compelling reason to do something other than status quo, to buy. And then ultimately, people buy from people they trust. Our approach to that conversation to uncover why buy, they just feel valued, heard, trust on both sides, and that's what leads people to buy. And what I just described is how we teach other people to sell, but that's how we do it. We better do it that way.
Well, one of my favorite phrases to explain what we do in our company is we're like the chef who eats their own cooking, right? And that's just
Yeah.
what you just described, right? It's like, don't work with me because I'm going to tell you how to do all the things that I don't self, right?
Yeah.
So when you are eating your own cooking, that is a huge credibility point in your favor, no doubt. It's interesting to me. Of course, one of the many reasons I wanted to have you on Storylines is because of how you talk about sales and you use words. If you think about popular culture and films like Tin Men and the idea that you always need to be closing and that
Mhm.
sales is, as you just alluded to, uh, high pressure rather than low pressure. And it's transactional rather than relationship based. These are all aspects of
Yeah.
great storytelling. Great stories create a relationship, and there's a narrative arc. Buyers typically have a problem, which is what you just talked about.
Mhm.
And to me, from the end of the business world that I've lived in for most of the last several decades, being able to communicate an authentic way of engaging with your audience and creating a relationship is the path to success.
Yeah.
I suspect we're going to find out that that's what you've experienced in your success with sales as well. But before we dig into that, I wanted to just unpack a little bit. You said some really interesting things a few minutes ago about your own view of sales and how it didn't track with your heart. So, can you share with our audience, or what is it about your personal story that is reflected in your business today?
So the question about heart alignment in what we do, I feel very much living out my beliefs and my heart today with sales in my corporate life.
Sure.
13 years in corporate America, uh, it very much was about activity, activity, activity. It was a numbers game, and you
Yeah.
just had to get out there and get yeses, go close something. It was teaching on how to talk about your products and services and benefits. It
Right.
wasn't about how to ask questions and listen and build trust. It was about how to get a yes, not how to be comfortable that you may not be a fit. And ultimately, it could be a no. But in reality, seeking the truth. Like, it might not be a fit. And so it wasn't about that. It was really activity, numbers, getting yeses. And
Yeah.
I was, in my heart, it was, well, yeah, but these are people. I've learned things that, man, this would not be a good fit. It's not win-win. So I felt conflicted with the pressures of I have to go close something with, yeah, but it doesn't seem like it makes sense. I don't feel good about it. So asking for the order on something that doesn't seem like there's good alignment doesn't feel right. So you hear it from the top. So that's where I struggled. And I don't believe that's the most effective way to sell. Activity matters, but it's quality,
Yes.
which comes back down to, and I love actually how you tie storytelling into relationships. And even the way I've described that there's pain and there's solving pain and there's a story behind it, it's all so true. But it's really about not making assumptions, not being outcome based, not feeling pressure. Because if you're not tied to an outcome and you go where the truth goes, you really don't feel pressure. You can just have a conversation like you're at a barbecue, or it could be a multi-million dollar opportunity. Same, same kind of level of pressure. Your heart doesn't beat differently. You breathe the same. It's all good. And that's what we bring into sales. And that's what creates the strongest relationships. That also brings the greatest results. More business with the right customers. That's what it leads to. That's so contrarian, but it makes so much sense, doesn't it?
It really does. And Jorge, there's so many of these truisms out there in sales. For instance, the best new customer is an existing customer. Well, how are
Yeah.
you going to have that kind of a relationship, right? If you're treating that sale as simply another transaction.
Yeah.
Why would a client or a customer come back to you if there is not that relationship? If they don't feel seen and heard, if they don't feel, as you just said, that you're getting to the truth of their need rather than, I was talking to somebody earlier. Another one of my favorite examples is don't be a hammer salesman. Have you ever heard that? Right.
Yeah.
And so for the audience, it's like the hammer salesman says, no matter what your problem is, I sell hammers and you need a hammer.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the truth of the
Yeah.
world, is it?
No.
Right? You know, like you said a couple minutes ago, sometimes it's not the right fit. Here's
Yeah.
the interesting thing from the storytelling end of the world that I live in. There's research that shows if you have that kind of an honest conversation that you just described, and I'm not the right fit for you, but it's been a good conversation, I'm likely to recommend you to somebody who does need you.
It's absolutely true. For 7 years, I owned an Allstate insurance agency and I built it from scratch. I sold it 7 years later. The way I got started, we moved into a new state, a state where my wife was from. So she had a lot of friends and I didn't know anyone. And I entered into a new industry. I was in the high tech hardware, worked for IBM and Adobe and sold
Wow.
software and technology to Apple and Microsoft. And so that was my world. And I thought, okay, residual income is the holy grail in business. And what better place? Like you want to make money while you're playing golf. So insurance, it's residual income. So that I decided I'm going to move into the insurance world. It's relationship driven. I've got a sales background. So I started with, I reached out to all of her friends, everyone she knew. I'm like, y'all listen, just let me quote your business. I don't care whether you buy or you don't buy. Just, hey, if I can save you some money and you think I can bring more value, hey, maybe you switch, but I need practice. I have to say, I got more referrals from people I didn't do business with
Wow.
than people I did because they felt valued and no pressure. It was productive. I helped them learn things they didn't know because I
Mhm.
was interested in the relationship, not a transaction. And that's where the business and it just grew. It was amazing. And that's completely correct. I
Yeah,
want to
that's
comment
amazing.
on your point about your best new customer is an existing customer.
Yes.
This might sound odd, but we're always out, get out there and meet new people. How you deliver on your existing client services is absolutely where your next business is going to come from. Like the best way to fill your pipeline is to knock out of the ballpark or exceed client expectations with the work you have.
Mhm.
Take that very seriously because not only can they, if they grow or you can expand services there, or they will tell people how amazing the work was and you'll get referrals from that business. And that's actually how our company has grown is exactly through that model.
Wow, that is great. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to dig into how Topaz and how Jorge work with clients to produce results. Don't go away. All right, folks, welcome back to this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, invest in you, work for you, or partner with you. We call it your capital S story. In this episode, we are honored to have Jorge Chavez with us, the founder of Topaz Sales Consulting. And we want to dig into how Topaz works with its clients. To segue into that, give us your definition, if you will, please, of storytelling. Obviously, this is our storytelling podcast. We have our definition. You're a sales expert. How does storytelling fit into what you do?
For sure. I appreciate that. As we prepared for this episode, we got some clarity around what's your version of storytelling and how does that fit into our narrative. And we came out with two things I think that are highly relevant. Um, we actually define the difference between marketing and sales.
Uh-huh.
And when we define it in the way that I will, they require completely opposite skills. They're different. So marketing, I believe, ties into a lot of storytelling, and so you're trying to be interesting. You're doing telling and you're educating. You're excited. Check us out. Look at what we've done,
Mhm.
and we could help you. And come to our website. And the goal of marketing is to pique someone's curiosity. They'll be
Right.
like, "Oh, I didn't know that." So now once curiosity is piqued and someone said, you said something that really caught my attention. And they ask you a question like, hey, can you tell me? And they start relating, how could this help me? We have to take that marketing and I'll kind of say that storytelling upfront hat off and
Yep.
use a different set of skills. We go from being interesting to being interested,
I love
from
that.
telling and educating to asking questions, listening and seeking understanding. So it's a completely, from being highly emotional to, like excited to emotionally detached from the outcome.
Hmm. Like a doctor doing a diagnosis, right?
100%. So, and when we switch hats, we use different skills and we continue that process. But what we're learning and what they're learning is, do they have any problems to solve? That compelling reason. Is there a problem to solve? Anything to disrupt the status quo? There's trust. There's learning. Not only do we learn what problems they have, we learn what they value. Like, for instance, and this is an interesting one, most people don't think a lot about this. Is competition good? I think competition is great. I think it's
Mhm.
great for consumers because they have choices, but it also keeps companies on their toes.
Yes.
They have to be better than their competition if they want to win. So I like competition. No, I love competition. I think it's good for consumers and it makes us really stay on our toes and be on our game. When competition comes up and as we're asking questions looking for issues and problems, we learn what customers value. What's important to
Mm.
them? Is it product? Is it service? Is it schedule? Is it communication? Is it safety? Whatever it is, the second part of storytelling, so the first part would be marketing and piquing curiosity. The second part comes, I believe, is after you learn what they value, the story or the narrative, when it comes to, for us, it's the last step of our process, is
Right.
presenting your solution. You tell your narrative, your story, but you tie what you deliver with what they value. That's a story.
Yes.
That's an art. That means you asked smart questions and you listened. They actually will write your proposal done properly, but then you come back with, okay, so here's what we're going to do, and here's how this helps make your pain go away and brings the things you shared you valued. And at that point, that story done properly, they're like, this is great. I love it. They're like, you solved my problems. You addressed my concerns. Your solution meets all my expectations. And where do I sign? You don't even have to ask for the order.
R- Exactly. So much of what you said really hits home with me. A couple of things. One, at Vendilli, we always say we have several of us who are doing selling, including me. When we're in that initial conversation, try and allocate 60 plus percent of the time to allow the prospect, the person you're conversing with, to do most of the talking,
Yeah.
and you're doing the listening, right? The other thing is, there's so many well-known sales training programs out there. Some years ago, I went through a Sandler class, and the fellow who was teaching the course said that research had been done that showed the average salesperson was able to stay silent for point 0.9 seconds when a
Huh.
prospect stopped talking. And I mentioned that because I think that, and you laughed. I think that kind of hits on a lot of where your model comes from, right? I mean, you don't want to be training sales teams to do all the blabbing. They've got to be listeners, right? So
Yeah.
could you give our audience a little bit of a sense of how Topaz works with its clients?
Yeah, for sure. Your point 0.9 seconds, by the way, we talk a lot about communication and we help people understand their communication preferences because the way we communicate with others has a big impact on the trust that we develop. And because people buy from people they trust, communication becomes very important. And I would think that the extrovert is external processor. They think out loud and so they talk a lot and they hate silence. The introvert won't speak unless you ask a question, and they love silence. So point 0.9 seconds times that by about 100, and they're happy. The extrovert, I know one extrovert, she said she has to sit on her hands so she'll talk less.
Oh,
Because they're also the body language is
oh
flailing
yeah.
all over. But it's true. There's just such pressure. Like they feel like the only way to sell, the traditional salesperson believes this. If you just knew what I know and how we help other people and how we could save you money, you would surely buy. So curiosity and silence don't exist in that brain. I just need to tell you, and my belief is you're going to then buy from me. We don't believe that. We believe that people buy to avoid pain and people buy from people they trust. So we train very differently. We train on skills that help people listen and ask questions and seek pain and build trust and build great relationships because that we believe will lead to sales. Um, at that point 0.9 seconds, so that's a pretty interesting statistic.
Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
surprise me.
And you can see it stuck with me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, another interesting one along that. Do you know what the attention span of a human being is today?
About 8 seconds.
Yeah, it's about 8 seconds. And I know there's a myth that goes around, but it's memorable when you said it sticks with you. Like the attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. Now that may not be true, but I've heard that.
Well, so I'll tell you, frequent listeners or those who watch often of the podcast know I wrote a book called Finding Your Capitalist Story. And I actually dug up the original research. It was done by Microsoft in 2005. And I think Microsoft has enough money. They should redo the study because I think, and I'm sure you'll agree, that thanks to social media and the internet, if you redid that study today, it might be less than 8 seconds.
Sure. So when you meet someone new, that's how much time you have to pique their curiosity. So if you go in with that 30-second elevator pitch thinking that's how you sell, like that's so old school, no, you've got like 8 seconds or less to pique curiosity to get 8 more seconds. I mean, we train on that, like helping people create a standout introduction in such a compelling way that people go, huh, how do you do that? And then, of course, we would then train, look, you got to ask questions. You give them back the mic and say, well, tell me more about you, or why is that interesting to you, or how do you do it today? Like that kind of thing. But I would agree. And it's getting shorter and shorter. That attention span, it's, I don't know if that's good, but it is
I
what it
don't
is.
know either, but I mean, for the audience, Jorge, as we know, business world's not going to stop because it's more difficult to get people's attention in a shorter period of time, right? It is what it is, as the kids say. So
It is
we
what
need
it
to
is.
adapt,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's one of the reasons why what you do is so compelling. We like to ask our guests, what brings you the most satisfaction in the work you do? What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning?
That's a great question. And actually, when I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking about getting out of bed, I ask myself that question, why am I doing this? And my answer is, and this is huge, it really comes from a faith perspective. I mean, so God is the CEO of our business. I'm only the president. I
Mhm.
believe fully it's his business, it's his money, it's his clients, and we get to do this. So we get to help people. We are absolutely transforming lives and relationships. Though we are about sales, asking questions, building trust, learning and listening, bringing value, helping people make more informed decisions, absolutely makes sense in sales. But when you apply those same skills, not making assumptions, asking
Yeah.
questions to your teenage children, to your
Oh, yeah.
spouse, to your coworkers, we've changed people's lives. I mean, it's a transformational impact. We just know that what we're doing it's so much bigger than us. It's so much bigger than sales. And when we can see the positive impact we have on people's relationships, more trust, more truth, better use of time, better success in business, better success in marriage, who wouldn't get up for that in the morning? And that's really what we do. And we've just been very fortunate that we've been able to build a successful business that pays for what we need, and we can help a lot of people. And I think I'm gonna when I don't breathe anymore, I can rest saying, "Hey, well done, good and faithful servant." I think we're on that path. At least I
Yeah.
feel that way. So I get out of bed energized because it's way bigger than a paycheck.
Way well done, good and faithful servant. I'd love to have that on my tombstone as well. Sales well done, as you described it, it's a transferable skill. It's not just something within the box of driving quarterly revenue. Oh, hey, it works great for that, but it works great in a lot of other places too, doesn't it? Which leads me to ask you this question. Can you share a success story for our audience and bring it to life? And, if it's
Yeah.
needs to be anonymous, that's fine. But just to give folks an idea of what it's like to work with you.
Sure. Here's a good example. This guy. So we actually we work with a lot of CEO coaches, and CEO coaches coach CEOs, owners, and those are our target market. Those are the people who buy from us. So this gentleman was introduced. He was a CEO of this company, is in construction, and the guy reaches out to me and says, "Hey George, so and so asked me to give you a call. I'm looking for training for a salesperson and a branch manager for us. Can you help me?" And so my response to the CEO was, "Well, I don't know." I said, "How do you know they're trainable?" And he goes, "That's a good question. I don't know. How do I find out?" And I go, "Well, we can do a sales evaluation and determine their sales and sales management potential. If they're coachable and trainable, but if a lot of other things, what they're the good, the bad, and the ugly." So we ran and I go, and hey, by the way, but before you invest a dime, let's figure this out to see what kind of expectation you can get if they can be developed and trained, and even if they have a passion for sales and sales management. And so we ran those two reports. We came back and we looked at the data, and it turned out they both were. But he looked at the report and he goes, "Wow, this is really helpful." He goes, "I got 20 salespeople. I would love to get this data on all of them." So we decided, okay, well, let's get all that data, and we ran it on all 20 people. He goes, "Okay, now I know what I've got. Can you train them?" And so we divided and had two groups, an East group and a West group. Well, that was in 2020. We are now on our 28th group of salespeople. We've trained every white collar position in their business. They're like almost a $200 million company now. They were only 14 million when we started. They had two branches. Now they're 11. They're international, and they started a sister company that's like 50 million in revenue. And they all had to go through this training. Their branch managers, project managers, even their accountants and their IT people, because they wanted them to become better at asking questions, better at listening. And the managers went through management, sales leadership training. So we still work with this group today. We've transformed their business, and we are actually on their 5-year plan. They started with no products and no big companies. They were kind of a startup in 2018. They bought a company. I started in 2020. They had no products and no big customers, and they entered new markets. On their 5-year plan, the number one market differentiator is buyer facilitator, which is our sales training. We don't teach people how to sell. We teach them how to facilitate the buying process and help buyers buy. And so their sales approach is their differentiator, their number one market differentiator. And that's what allowed them to go in and beat companies that have been there for 20 and 30 years. They outsold them because instead of doing capabilities presentations when they got a meeting, they did a pre-call plan to figure out what questions to ask, what they wanted to learn. And that is a great success story. And we love them, and we work with them on every level, and it's great.
That is an awesome success story. Thank you for sharing that. And for those of you watching, I'm sure you can see just from your face how much you're enjoying relating that story. And for audio listeners, it's in your voice too. And that is just an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. I've really enjoyed having you on this episode. So, how can people best reach you?
Yeah, the best way to reach us, go to our website, topazsalesconsulting.com. If you go to our website, you can learn more about our programs, but we have a tremendous number of resources, hiring calculators to figure out the cost of a bad hire, five sales hiring mistakes. We have customer testimonials, case studies, quizzes. You can test your beliefs. And there's all sorts of resources there. So I would suggest people go check us out. We have a lot of videos. And then if you want to have a conversation, just on our contact page, I want to have a conversation, and me or one of our team will reach out, have a conversation, and get to know you and see if there's any way to help you.
Really appreciated. Jorge, thanks for being a guest on Storylines Live. We really
And
appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to our audience as well for being with us for this episode on the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business. The one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. Your capital S story. We'll see you next time on the next episode of Storylines Live.